Hey guys, I don't know if it's 2020, COVID, or just bad luck, but it seems like every car we test and review is breaking. Now, you might be thinking our long-term Chevy Silverado that we purchased is finally on the fritz. Well, you'd be wrong. It's actually this Corvette that Chevy lent us for a week to test. And if you recall, we put it up against the Model Y earlier this week, and then we also happened to have the new Lexus LC500 in our offices. So we thought, you know what, two sporty convertibles, let's test them. And the first thing that we did was, of course, pull the tops back, and that's where the trouble began.
If you're in the market for a sweet pair of headphones, check out this pair from Cove. I've been using these to edit TFL videos for about a month, and the Bluetooth works from 30 feet away. That way you can even flip on the noise canceling and tune out while you're working in the garage. They're super comfortable, and a charge lasts up to 12 hours, which means you can fold them up, toss them in their included bag, and take your music anywhere. Plus, if you get a call while wearing them, the built-in mic won't miss a beat. Here's something cool. With noise canceling on, they're quiet from the outside until you open them up. Usually these headphones are $199, but use the code FAST68 and get over 67% off of them. And that's the best deal you're gonna find on noise canceling headphones anytime soon, and the reviews speak for themselves. For more information, click the link in the description below.
Behind me, I have two high-end convertibles. They're both beautiful, they're both rear-wheel drive, but beyond that, they're both super different. In this video, we are going to compare the Lexus LC500 convertible to the brand new Chevrolet Corvette convertible. First things first, let's see how the tops come down. The switch broke. So something is going on with the Corvette top. It's like just freaking out. It's the windows going up and down in the back here, but the top is not, doesn't seem to be having a good day here. Let me make sure there's no obstacles in the way. Alright, that works. Let's see if we can put it down. Oh, let's see, here we go. There it is. Yeah, this top needs a little bit of work, at least on this car. It's a little broken. The switch just kind of doesn't tell the top to do what it's supposed to do. Anyways, let's keep going with the review. This is what the key looks like on the Lexus LC500. Very elegant, very small, and you have buttons for lock, unlock, and the trunk pop. And check this out. You can also get these little key covers for them and make them look extra classy. This one actually matches the interior color. How cool is that? Also preserves the key. The Corvette key feels a little bit less high quality, but it does have the Corvette wings here in the back, and on the front you'll notice unlock, lock, keyless start, and you also have pops for not only the rear trunk but the front trunk and the convertible top. And we'll talk about the trunks here in a second. Both the Lexus and the Corvette have some very sophisticated door handles. Here on the Lexus you can see when the vehicle is locked the door handle is flush, but when I unlock the car, the door handle pops out, you get the Lexus logo, and then you can reach underneath and open the door. Then when you close the door, lock the car, they disappear back into the body. The door handle on the Lexus has this beautiful satin chrome finish. Simply pull the door handle, push the door open, and step on out. The Corvette also has hidden door handles, but they are even more hidden than the Lexus. To actually open the door, you have this little pad located in the intake. Pull the button in the pad, and the door will open up. But you gotta know exactly where that little pad is, or you'd have no idea how to get into the car. The Corvette has fully electronically actuated doors. To get out of the vehicle, you push a button located here on the door, and it pops open. But in the event of power failure, there is a mechanical override down here on the floor. Pull it up and you can get out. To start the Lexus, you have a button here in the dashboard. You put your foot on the brake, push the button, and the V8 fires into life. And then to shift it into gear, you actually have this traditional looking gear selector that is not traditional at all. You actually pull it left and down into drive, and then it pops back into the middle. Reverse is a pull it left and up. And then there's a manual mode, which is just straight down. But every time you shift gears, it returns to a central position, and park is a button. To start the Corvette, you also put your foot on the brake, push the start button. Wowzer, and it fires into life. Now the gear selector is even a little bit more weird on the Corvette than the Lexus. I've got a series of buttons and switches here. So park is a button, reverse is a pullback on a switch, neutral is a button, and then drive is a pullback on another switch, and there's even a manual mode. No standard handle in the Corvette. The Lexus LC500 is such a surprising car to drive because it is incredibly quiet and incredibly refined as you'd expect. And then you give it some gas and this happens. What is that sound? Up to 7,000 RPM, it just screams. That V8 comes to life, and it's got this howl to it. It's not Lexus-like whatsoever. Now, the steering and the chassis, you know, they don't really live up to that howl. You don't feel the need to go flicking this around a track day. But if you need, floor it, ride the wave of torque, experience the almost LFA-like scream, and just enjoy life. It's much better in a straight line than around the corners. You know, it's not a land yacht. It's not going to fall off its wheels if you take a corner too fast, but it's definitely more of a long distance cruiser, and then surprise your passenger when you go to floor it. It's like 40 degrees out here in Colorado, so I'm going to try to put the Corvette top up. Let's see if it'll cooperate this time. So I'm going to start it up. Geez, it sounds good. Holding the switch. I did it that time. First try. Oh, it's stuck. I'm still holding the switch. I haven't taken my finger off of it. Oh, I figured it out. Whoopee! Maybe he doesn't like the cold. All right, and then got to put the little window up here. Oh no, now the window's stuck. Come on, go up. Go, no! Well, it's gonna be a little bit of a frosty drive, I fear. Now this Corvette doesn't drive as you'd expect. It drives so much better. It really is a supercar for half or a quarter of the price because you floor it, and pretty much at any speed it hooks up because it's mid-engine, and you just rock it down the road. And the engine note, that Lexus may howl, this thing just screams. It's such a classic American V8 noise. So you get the V8 noise experience, but then you get the Italian driving and handling experience. The seats in both of these cars perfectly match their character. Here in the Lexus, the seats are exquisitely made. They are super soft, super supple, they're diamond stitched, they're not crazy racy, they're not all that supportive when you go around a track, but they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to hold you nice and comfortably for thousands of miles on end because this is a Grand Tourer. The seats in this Corvette with the Z51 package are extremely racy. You can see that A, by the yellow seatbelt, which is a very fast color, but B, it's just like a racing bucket, super thin. You can actually see carbon fiber poking here through the middle. You can see a place for a harness. They're very racy. They'd be great around a track, but you know, not quite as good as the Lexus for a long road trip. The Lexus has a beautifully made steering wheel. I love the stitching here along the middle of the airbag. We also have buttons on both the left and the right side of the wheel. Some subtle paddle shifters behind the steering wheel, but you can see that, you know, this is meant more just to kind of caress your hands as you drive down the road. It's not supposed to be all that sporty. The Corvette also has a stitched leather wrap steering wheel, but it's a square. So you can see here, I have a flat bottom, I have somewhat rounded sides, but then a flat top. It's kind of F1 inspired. I do like the little center line here, so that you know when you're pointing straight. But on, you know, a long trip, it's not quite as nice to hold on to. It's great around a track, you know, 10 and 2 is pretty good, but for just kind of cruising along, the square is kind of an odd thing. The climate controls in the Lexus are completely hidden from view until you start the vehicle, and then they appear out of nowhere, and you control them using these silver toggles. So I can go auto, I can change the temperature, and I can change the fan speed. This is very elegant, but one thing that isn't my favorite aspect is to actually turn on the heated seats. You have to go into the infotainment. So I have to go menu, climate, and then seat heating and steering wheel heating. So it's a little bit of a faff just to turn on the heated seats. The climate controls in the C8 Corvette are positioned on this massive central column, and they are hard buttons. This is nice. So you'll notice up here we've got the zone for the driver, so it's set to 71. You got this little screen. Then we've got buttons for heated and cooled seats. We've got buttons here for airflow. We have a toggle for the fan speed. Of course, you can turn it off. And then down here, you have the controls for the passenger. I actually prefer the system more because I like having hard buttons for my heated and cooled seats. The air vent situation in the Lexus is pretty bizarre. So I actually have 3 here for the passenger, 2 that kind of point at the passenger's face, and another one that, well, points at the passenger's face. And then there's this weird one in the middle, which is just kind of oddly positioned, and then there's one more over there for the driver. So I actually have 5 forward-facing air vents rather than your traditional 4. Now the Corvette has 4 air vents, 2 here in front of the passenger, 2 for the driver, but the 2 here for the passenger are basically in the same location, and you toggle them on and off with these funny little levers. So up, down. You can also turn them on and off by moving this little toggle left and right. It's a little chintzy if I'm being honest, but it does do the trick. There's pretty good storage inside the Lexus LC, so both the driver and the passenger have good-sized door bins. Here in the middle, I've got these 2 little square cubbies, as well as a fairly large central storage area. I also have a really small glove box, which I can open using this button. You can see it barely fits the owner's papers, and that's about it. And then I've got the best interior storage feature of them all. This LC has rear seats, and the Corvette doesn't. Granted, they're really, really small rear seats. I wouldn't want to sit back there for any period of time, but for groceries, hey, it's great. Now, one area that's not so good in the LC is the cup holder situation. I have one here, and then I've got these square things. But neither of those are particularly all that useful because the square thing is only good for like Lipton iced tea bottles, and then this round one is just kind of precariously placed by this precious touchpad drive selector and the climate controls. There is less interior storage in the C8 Corvette. First of all, the door cubbies are really, really small. You do have a central cubby here, which is about the same size as the Lexus. You also have a pretty good sized glove box, but behind the seats, you do have this wireless phone tray, which is great for charging up your iPhone, but let's be honest, it's not going to hold all that much more. And of course, no rear seats. However, the cup holder situation, much better. 2 large cup holders, they're not in the way here. Perfect cup holders as you'd come to expect from a Corvette. To get into the trunk of the Lexus, I can either use a button on the key, or I can use this hidden button here in the passenger taillight. Push the button, and the trunk pops open. Now granted, this is I would say a very small storage area, but to demonstrate it, I've brought along my Rubbermaid tub. Well, you can see it fits one of those pretty well. I could put another one in the back seat if I had to, but apart from that, you know, you're not going to be carrying your your stuff from Home Depot in the back of the Lexus. Not that you would, because if you can afford an LC500, you probably have a couple other cars. To get into the trunk of the Corvette, I can use a key or this little pad here underneath the rear of the vehicle, and then I can pop it open. Now you can see it's actually a very small trunk in terms of front to back, but it's also very wide. My Rubbermaid tub is not going to fit like this, I don't think, but it's surprisingly deep, so if I just turn it on its side like this, check it out. I have a ton of space back here. And then of course we come to the Corvette party feature, which is up front. The 2020 Corvette is of course mid-engined, which means I have a front trunk or a frunk. Now to get into the frunk I can use a key or this super secret button located here under one of the front intakes. Push the button, the trunk pops open, and look at the size of that baby! I bet I can get my tub to fit in here. Ooh, will it close? Will it close? Push down. Like a dream! That was awesome. The worst part of the Lexus is the infotainment screen, which is almost unusable. It's just horrible. They use this little touchpad down here. Some of the newer Lexuses have gone to a touchscreen. This one still uses a touchpad, and it's just so hard to use. At least there's volume and 2 knobs, which is good, but the actual, navigation of the infotainment is so much worse than the Corvette. You're better off just selecting some chill radio station, leaving it on, and putting the top down, cruising down to the beach on a warm sunny day, because that's about all it's good for. The infotainment system in the Chevrolet Corvette is pretty much the same system you'd find in like a Silverado, and I love it. It's miles better than the Lexus. Easy to use, really quick, really responsive, it's intuitive, it's a touchscreen. This is an industry standard. People do not give GM enough credit for their infotainment screen because it's just quick, it's perfect. It does everything you need it to. Is it fancy? No, it's not really fancy, but it is great to use. The Lexus LC has a wind blocker that lives behind the front seats. Now it comes to us in this bag here, nice little protective carrying case. I can open it up, and it should, there it is. So you actually have to get out of the car to do this, but it slots into a couple of holes and grooves here. Like that, and then over here, same thing. And now the wind blocker is deployed. The Lexus has a front-mounted 5-liter naturally aspirated V8. It makes 471 horsepower. Now honestly, under the hood there's not much to see because it's covered in plastic shrouding, but honestly, you can see a lot more of this engine than you can in the Corvette, which is completely concealed. Somewhere down here is a 6.2-liter LT2 V8, as Chevrolet calls it. It makes 495 horsepower, but on the Corvette convertible, you really can't see it. You can kind of pop the tonneau cover on the convertible, and then like a little inspection cover, but you're gonna have to get your tools out if you want to take a good look at that big old V8. The Lexus has a really interesting wheel design. It's almost like a polished chrome against a black finish, and they are huge 21-inch wheels front and rear. But it's a different story in the Corvette. There are a bunch of wheel options on the new Corvettes, but this one uses a 19-inch wheel in the front, a 20-inch wheel in the rear, and you'll probably notice something interesting. Bright neon green, or is that yellow Z51 brake calipers. I'm not so sure I love that choice, but luckily you can option them in a bunch of different colors. I do really like the headlights on this Lexus LC. You have 3 distinct LED pods, but then in front of the pods you actually have the light signature, which is the classic Lexus L. Now the Corvette also has a really cool set of headlights. You've got the main beam, and then above the main beam you have the light signature, which kind of rises up toward the back and then swooshes forward down here in the front. Check out the taillights here in the Lexus LC. You've got this crazy holographic effect, and it looks like the actual taillight design extends infinity into the body of the vehicle. I love this. It's such a cool design. And the turn signals are these light blades that extend down toward the bottom of the vehicle. Now, of course, the Corvette still has the signature quad taillight, but the coolest part of this vehicle are the turn signals, which are sequential. How neat is that? I love that design. Both of these cars have very distinctive front-end designs. Of course, the Lexus still relies on its classic spindle grille, which works great on the LC, and in my opinion doesn't work so great on other vehicles. And the Corvette looks pretty much nothing like any other Corvette from the past. It's very aeronautic in its design, and I do love this kind of wingtip edge that leads along this trunk. The elegance continues on the back of the Lexus, and one thing that's kind of interesting, it looks like you have 2 outlets for the exhaust, but each outlet actually has 2 pipes that live within, so really, it's got quad exhausts. The rear of the Corvette is of course much more racy, with the rear spoiler, tons of venting, a rear diffuser, and then of course, prominent quad exhaust. Now which one would I take? Well, That comes down to a couple of different aspects. First of all, pricing. The Corvette starts at about $59,000. The convertible is more expensive than that. And then of course, the one you see behind me is pretty well equipped, coming in at 85 grand. The LC though, that's next to it, is much more expensive. That one you see right there, $113,000. Of course, the Corvette is so much more fun to drive. It's more visceral. But there's one thing that I think is preventing me from buying it. Let me show you. I am secretly a 90-year-old man, and living with this car for a week has been an absolute joy, but getting in and out of it, not so much. And I have a feeling by the time I can afford either of these vehicles, this is going to be a much bigger problem. So while I am still somewhat limber, it's a little bit of a chore when you have to do it multiple times an hour. The Lexus, on the other hand, is like getting in and out of any other car. It's got a much narrower sill, and you can kind of slide in and out of it no problem. Now, of course, you're going to rip me a new one in the comment section below, but quite honestly, because I listen to Glenn Miller, I think the Lexus is a little bit more befitting for my personality. It's not as racy, it's not as fun to drive, but just cruising down the road, which, let's be honest, we do 99.9% of our lives when we drive, the Lexus is just more comfortable, and it still sounds brilliant, even if it is a little bit slower than you might expect. Well, as always, this is Tommy with the Fastlane Car. Check out tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in new and used car reviews.